Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're taking a fresh look at a story I guarantee you probably haven't thought about since you were, 5 years old? I want you to picture it. A fast, kinda arrogant rabbit and a slow, hyper-determined turtle. It's a total childhood nostalgia trip, right? But what if I told you that this seemingly simple little fable actually holds these incredible hidden depths? We are talking ancient political science, complex cognitive neurology, and some truly profound modern philosophy.
Okay, let's dive into this. What do you think the moral of The Tortoise and the Hare actually is? Seriously, take a second and really think about it. Is the real meaning of this fable truly as simple as we've all been taught?
I'm willing to bet the phrase slow and steady wins the race is exactly what just popped into your head. And, whether you learned it from Aesop's ancient Greek collection, or maybe the classic Hindi Khargosh aur Kachua retelling that's so popular across Indian folklore, this exact moral has been absolutely drilled into us since kindergarten. The lesson is always that perseverance overcomes arrogance, plain and simple.
Well, there is so much more beneath the surface here. Let's look at Section 1, Fables Across Cultures.
And this brilliantly illustrates the fascinating divide between global storytelling traditions. So, over in ancient Greece, around 620 BCE, Aesop's fables were these very concise oral traditions that really focused on individual virtues, things like honesty or the dangers of being foolish. But meanwhile, we have the Panchatantra, composed in ancient India around the 3rd century BCE. These definitely weren't just simple bedtime stories. Actually, they were these highly complex, embedded narratives, literally stories within stories, that were specifically designed to teach political science, statecraft, and strategy to the sons of royalty. How crazy is that?
It's just wild to trace how these fables evolved. They start out as ancient oral traditions, somewhat surviving through the centuries. Then, by the 16th century, they finally hit printed editions, which totally solidified their place in literature. Fast forward to 2015, and these very same fables have traveled all the way from ancient dust and parchment right into modern cognitive science labs.
Which transitions us perfectly into Section 2, the science of storytelling. Because as it turns out, understanding a simple story about a woodland animal race actually requires a highly complex neurological feat.
To really understand why, we have to look at a concept called theory of mind. This is a massive cognitive milestone. Basically, it's the ability to conceptualize internal mental states and recognize that other people, or, in this case, other animals, have beliefs, desires, and intentions that are completely different from our own. Once a child develops this, they stop just seeing, say, a fox talking to a crow, and they start actually understanding that the fox has an internal motivation going on, like vanity, hunger, or just straight-up deceit.
But to grasp the real nuance of a fable, a child kind of needs to level up. And that brings us to second-order theory of mind. This is the capacity to understand embedded mental states. It's the neurological ability to actually think, she knows that he knows. This is absolutely crucial for understanding complex deception. I mean, think about it. To really understand a fable, you have to know exactly who is tricking whom and exactly why the victim is falling for it in the first place.
And that brings us right to Section 3, Evolving Understanding, From Facts to Life Lessons. To prove exactly how this works in the human brain, researchers conducted this absolutely fascinating study published in PubMed Central. They tracked kids from 4 to 12 years old to see exactly how their brains processed Aesop's fables at different stages of cognitive development.
Let's move to and see how this builds. When a 4-year-old hears a fable, they're basically at step 1. They just list the literal story facts. They might say something like, the fox talked to the bird. Simple enough. As they get a bit older, they hit step 2 where they start recognizing the deception. The fox wanted to trick the bird. But it actually isn't until they're around 11 or 12 years old that they reach step 3. That's when they can finally extract a fully deconceptualized life lesson, moving from foxes are mean to a much more abstract truth like, beware of flatterers who want something from you.
The researchers actually quantified what drives this huge leap in understanding. Now, general vocabulary is obviously super important, and that accounts for about 36% of the variance in a child's understanding. But a child's second-order theory of mind, again, that ability to understand those embedded mental states, well, that provides a unique 6% advantage in grasping the true moral of the story.
So the crucial point is really the number 42. When you put them together, general vocabulary and the ability to read complex mental states account for 42% of the variance in whether a child can actually comprehend the moral of a fable. It's not just about knowing the words, it is literally about mapping the minds of the characters.
Now that we know all the heavy neurological lifting required, let's look at Section 4, Reimagining the Hare.
We're going to see how history, satire, and modern philosophy completely subvert that classic slow and steady interpretation we all just sort of take for granted.
You see, even back in classical times, the tortoise was used to challenge our basic assumptions. The ancient philosopher Zeno of Elea used a race between the mythical hero Achilles and a tortoise to mathematically argue that movement itself is basically an illusion. In Zeno's paradox, Achilles gives the tortoise a head start, but mathematically, every time Achilles reaches where the tortoise just was, the tortoise has moved slightly ahead, creating this bizarre, infinite mathematical loop.
Fast forward a bit, and over the centuries, writers have realized that relying on a super slow tortoise isn't always the best idea. Take this brilliant, kind of dark satire written by Lord Dunsany back in 1915. He wrote a version where a terrible forest fire breaks out. The animals desperately need to send a messenger to warn the rest of the forest. And because the tortoise had just won the big race, they naturally assumed he was the swiftest, so they sent him. As Dunsany so darkly notes, the reason his version isn't widely known is because almost none of the animals actually survived to tell it.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how a beautiful piece published in A Lotus in the Mud flips the entire moral on its head by finally asking, hey, what about the hare? In this reimagining, the hare didn't fall asleep just because he was lazy or arrogant. No, he lay down under the banyan tree, heard the buzzing bees and the rustling leaves, and actually had a profound philosophical awakening. He realized that racing for status is just this endless, totally futile cycle. I mean, today he races a tortoise, tomorrow a snake, then a zebra, so he made a choice. He chose to step out of the rat race entirely.
In this version, when the ducks ask the hare why he isn't racing anymore, he realizes that simply existing in the present moment is far, far more valuable than winning some medal. He ultimately realized, and I quote, "I lost the race, but won the race of my life." He found actual enlightenment under that tree, all while the tortoise just kept blindly plodding along the track.
Which brings us to this provocative question to close out our explainer. It completely challenges everything we were taught when we were 5 years old. Think about your own daily grind for a second. Are you running the tortoise's race, head down, constantly grinding towards some arbitrary finish line for status and external validation? Or are you living the hare's life, brave enough to step off the track, rest under the shade of a tree, and actually enjoy the present moment? It's a fascinating way to look at a classic story, and I really hope it leaves you thinking differently the next time you see a tortoise or a hare.